Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and on today's episode, we'll be reviewing the long-awaited and greatly anticipated PT-1 sim pedal set from ProtoSimTech. Now, this is one great-looking and feeling pedal set, and I find the introductory pricing on this pedal set to be, well, quite amazing. And once you see the quality of the parts used and the heavy-duty construction of this pedal set, I think you're going to agree with me. First, we'll take a closer look at the pedals themselves and some of the accessories that you can order with them. So let's get to it. Alright, before we actually start talking about the pedals themselves, I thought you guys would like to see some of the accessories that I got with mine. Firstly, this is a PVC, a very tough, hard type of PVC plastic that is used as a mount for the pedals, and you can see they have slots for adjusting the pedals back and forth and for adjusting the pedals sideways if you want. Very nice hefty piece of mounting plate here, and what you see here is not really a heel plate per se. It doesn't raise up, although you can raise it up because of the brackets on each side, but it won't hold the weight of your heel because it'll just teeter-totter over. What it's really made for is when you have a rig that has a tilted floor plate in it, then you can actually still mount the pedals in a tilted position, but then you can loosen this up and swivel it so it graduates where the tilt stops and it gets flat again, so you can have that adjustability in it. Very cool, very heavy duty. This is a big heavy piece. Now, each pedal comes mounted, of course, to that plate with 4 of these, and it's just a nice screw set with lock washers and a safety lock nut on it. So you get 4 of those with each pedal, and we'll talk about the next thing, which is these. And these are pedal pads, which are the curved ones, and they're also a hard PVC type plastic. I almost feel like metal. They're so tough, or aluminum or something. They're very stiff. And if you look on them, you can see that the pattern is actually a straight up and down groove in it with no cross grooves. And of course that just facilitates your foot, or the sole of your shoe, sliding along here as you're pressing it down. So if I was the pedal lever with my hand here and you press down, your foot tends to slide along the front of it much easier. And I've already used this as a throttle and I like it, and I'm getting ready to test it on the brake and also on the clutch, because you get 3 pieces in the kit. I highly recommend this. This is really a nice feeling addition. You also get, when you buy those pedals, because they're thicker, you're going to need some of these stainless steel screws here. Get your little focus. Again, all top-notch stuff. Those are A270s, which is 304 stainless, and a 70 rating, which is like 3 tons braking rating. So you won't be snapping those off. And of course, not an accessory, which comes with the kit, you get a couple more bumpers, and the black being the hard one and the red being the soft. And we'll talk more about those later and how I have mine configured. You also get the standard fare of the Allen wrenches, which I don't use because I have my own. And you also get an extra stop, which is for the brake pedal. Here's a little closer look here. Now this is for the brake pedal, but I don't use it because I want to get the full travel. Not many people will be using this, I think, but it's great that it's there, and he thinks that somebody might use it. At least you have a chance to not have to go buy one. And also, this cool little tool he made for working on the smaller bits of the adjustments on the pedals that we'll see once we get there. Of course, I don't use this either because I've got my own little bits as far as tools go for handling the little teeny nuts. Right, so I guess that's about it as far as the accessories so far. He will be coming out with some other accessories in the future, but right now that's about it. So now what we'll do next is we'll get to looking at each individual pedal. I'm going to take them off my mount here, and we'll take just an overall look before we actually get to adjustments of what the pedals look like and how they're constructed. So we'll get to that next. So now we'll take an overlook, or an overview, of the pedals. First we'll start with the little box, the controller. It's got a DSD board in this bad boy, and you can see it's got the ProtoSimTech logo on there, and of course this is just a resistor up here that adjusts the actual sensitivity of the load cell. And over here we have a USB. Just a little plastic box, nothing special here, just gets the job done. We got a clamp on here to keep the cables from being pulled out if you put any stress on them. A nice little heat shrink on there. And this is just some automotive loom on the cords as they go to the respective pedals over here. And they're actually wired in. It looks like there's a little plug on these, but I wouldn't pull it off because I know the load cell is directly wired. But they've got little plugs on the resistors here, and we'll actually take a look at that while we're taking a closer look at the actual throttle pedal. Now, as you can see, it's got that nice powder coat finish on it. The special editions are calling these because they won't be black powder coated anymore. They're going to be some kind of a bead blast or sandblasted finish on the aluminum from now on. So these are the special editions. I like the black, but the black is going to be high maintenance. Got to be careful about scratching. I've already scratched one of these back in here, if you can see that. And I'll tell you about that when I get to the adjustments, how that got scratched. And nice flat pedal pads on these. And he's drilled all these holes the same. Unlike a lot of pedals out there that have these pads, you could actually move this anywhere you wanted to as long as you had the same spacing on these two holes lined up. You can move it up, you can move it down, move it sideways either way, and move it up and sideways if that's what you want to do. So there's a lot of adjustability in that. Not only that, once you do that, you've actually got slots on the side here that you can adjust up and down also. So ton of adjustability in this thing. And all this hardware that you see that is in this unit is all stainless steel. Very high quality stuff. I'll actually get you a closer look here. And if you can read that, let's see if we can get a focus first. There we go. If you can read these bolt tops right there, they're actually saying A2 with a -70 on it. And what that means is A2 is the mixture of stainless steel that's in the bolt, and the 70 is how much tonnage this thing will take before it breaks. And 70 is actually, I looked it up, it's actually 3 tons. So each one of these bolts is good for 3 tons. And there's a lot of bolts in here, as you can see. Very similar to the Husingveld as far as all these bars in here, and just having 2 plates that are joined together and reinforced with bars and bolts all through it. But that's about as far as the comparison goes between these and the HEs. Also, you can see the resistor there, and there's the plug I was talking about right there. It looks like just a plug on there that has some shrink tape on it, but I can't be sure, and so you just don't want to put any stress on this. That's why you got to be careful with this umbilical setup. And of course we see the resistor arm here and the resistors here, and of course we have this linkage that reminds me of my RC days. You can see this thing actually moves. Well, let's see, I'll get a better shot for you here this way. You can see that this, if you move this threaded rod, they're both moving around because they got little ball joints in them. Very cool. It keeps everything from binding up. Very good idea. And while we're here, we can see the stop, and it's adjustable stop down there. And we're going to go into adjustments and see how all that works just a little bit. We'll just do an overview. And of course, this is a preload on the spring here. One of the cool things to note here is he actually put a thick urethane tube or PVC tube that actually helps center this right here as it goes through. And a lot of guys, I remember my CSTs from Todd Cannon, as a good case in point, had just a plastic tube over the threaded rod that extended all the way through. And this actually has that nice, see how it guides it in that hole? Very cool. So it won't be flopping around anywhere as you're pushing it. And that's like I said, that's a very nice little addition there. Got indentations cut into these right here, these washers, so that the spring fits in them. And of course we have a rod end here. Very cool. So to keep things from binding up, you can see it moving there. And the clutch is very similar, except for the clutch mechanism that simulates a pressure plate in a clutch. Very similar to this. So let's go ahead, and I think you guys might want to see, just for the heck of it, we'll weigh them real quick. So we can see that this weighs, well, let me pick it up first. I'm at the 0. All right. 3.1 ounces. Well, 3 pounds and 1 ounces. That's what this weighs. It's a very light pedal here. And while I have it up, might as well weigh the rest of these guys so we don't have to do it again. The brake pedal is weighing out at, again, bringing my cord over here because I don't want to stretch anything. That looks like 4 pounds and 1 ounces. So this is a pound more than the throttle was. And last but not least is the clutch. And the clutch looks like Wow, almost 4 pounds. So very close to what the brake pedal weighs. Alright, so we got all that out of the way, so you know how much these things weigh. Pretty lightweight, actually, for what they are. And we'll go ahead and pull the brake over here now. Take a quick look at that. There's you can see the load cell in there. I'm going to actually flip this around. You might actually be able to read it if I can get the light to hit it right. Let's see. Maybe not. Oh, there we go. So, if you can see the numbers in there, you can tell which kind of load cell this is. He's actually getting a different load cell, he told me, on the next batch. So, always looking to improve on the equipment and the electronics that he's currently using, which is what every good builder does. Again, there's a lot of information on his site. You can just go to ProtoSimTech site, and he's got really in-depth videos on how all this is constructed and how this works. It pulls up on the back of the load cell there instead of pushing down like a lot of other load cell based brake pedals do. We have our urethane bumpers. The red's the softer one, the black's the harder one, and of course we have a preload here. If you'll notice on this one, I got it pretty tight. Not a whole lot of free play here before I actually engage the bumpers that are on this particular pedal. And you can actually loosen this up by this bolt here, turn it further up the threaded rod, and that'll give us more of that free feel, if you will, before the pedal engages. Like a lot of real brake pedals, they have just a little bit of play there before they actually engage. And that's all personal preference. Again, another rod end up here, very nice, so nothing binds up. Anything else we want to talk about here? Not really. Everything is, well, yeah, one thing. This is a massive, and I mean massive, pedal face. This thing is huge, and when we get to the actual tuning or adjusting of these pedals, we'll actually measure that and see how big it is. I mean, look at it compared to the accessory, the black accessories. You could put one on, you put that thing right in the middle, and it's huge. It's still huge, but you'll never miss it. So I imagine a lot of the oval guys will love the size of this pedal, because a lot of oval guys like bigger, fatter pedal faces for their brakes. And I kind of like them too, but I like to try different things, and I've already driven it with this pedal, and I have no problem at all with it. It's easy to hit. You'll never miss your brake, that's for sure. Right, so let's take a quick look at the clutch. Again, making sure my umbilical stays straight. And this looks like a more complex mechanism, doesn't it? So this is, again, as much like the throttle as far as the plates and the assembly, except we have something extra going on here at the top of the plate. And that's a couple of holes here for bolts that hold these two plates in to provide what I call the pressure plate spring mechanism. So it simulates a pressure plate spring as you push through it. So when we, see if I can do this without hurting myself. As we push it through, you can see these, there's two ball, well, maybe I should show you that first. You can see the two seal bearings up there that are actually riding in these aluminum tracks. And the springs keep tension on that bar and as it rides over. And what that does is, it gives you a feel of pressing through the spring on a pressure plate. As you push over that hump, it's like pushing through the spring plate. It's very cool. And then it's easy to hold once you're there. And then as you release it, it kicks the pedal back out, like the spring will push your foot back out on a pressure plate if you have a stick shift in your car. It simulates it very well. And you know, it's a very simple design when you look at it, but very clever at the same time. It just does a great job. But we'll look at it in depth once we do an adjustment on the clutch and see how that works. And again, you have to be careful when you make adjustments on these things, because when you adjust, you want to pull this pedal back. There's certain things you have to be mindful of as you're adjusting it. Mainly it's this little rod here that I've actually bent one of these rods when I first got it, because I'm the kind of guy, like a lot of you guys, that don't go look at the videos. And even when I looked at the video, I said, you know, I don't need to do that. But anyway, I bent one accidentally, but I bent it back out. It was okay. So again, a stop down here for the clutch stops to adjust your throw. And we have the holes on the side here, just like on the throttle. So the higher we go with the rod end that's in here, the harder it is to push. So that's another adjustable parameter of this pedal. And of course, we have preload for the spring back here. And as you notice, the spring has the long urethane tube in it, just like the throttle does. Very cool stuff. Well built. I mean, you just have to put these in your hand, and I've handled enough pedal sets in my lifetime to realize this is a very stout pedal set. And one more thing, all of them have the same thing. I didn't point that out. But he's got some nice bronze bushings that the pedal lever is actually pivoting on. Again, quality stuff. I mean, this is just quality build here. In fact, I still am puzzled how he can actually sell them for what he's selling them for. I know this might be just an introductory price to get everybody hooked on these great pedals, and the price might go up later, but I tell you what, for what he's selling them for now, I almost feel like I'm stealing them. All right, so that's a good overview. Let's get to the actual adjustments. We'll start with the throttle when we come back, and I'm going to mount each one of these pedals to my mounting plate that I use for the Stage 4 rig. So it'll stay still. I'm making adjustments on it. So when we come back, we'll see the throttle pedal mounted to that, and we'll get on with the adjustments. Throttle pedal will be first, so let's go ahead and adjust this one. First thing I'm going to do is change out the plate, and remember, or rather the pad. Remember back here, there's a little plate that's separate from this piece here. That's going to be loose and want to fall out on us as we take these screws off, because that plate kicks the face out of it just a bit, so it keeps it from making contact with this nice black powder coating and doesn't mar it all up. So let's go ahead and use a 4mm, that's what these are. And I always take the bottom one off first so that the pedal face doesn't fall over on me. If I took off the top one first, that's what would happen when I took the bottom one out. And we'll put it in our magnetic dish over here, which, by the way, because it's stainless, it hangs a little bit, but not a lot. You can see. See, because the stainless is not magnetic, but the bit of steel that is in there is, so it kind of will slide around you. But at least it's a cup to put them in. Grab the first one. Now we get this one. And remember that plate is back there, so when I take it loose, I can feel when it comes loose, and I try to catch the plate with the screw. See how it catches it as you bring it out? And now we're safe. So there you have the plate. Let's get rid of the screw. Get rid of this. And there's the separate plate that we will be reusing when we mount this guy, which has got the nice grooves, the PVC pedal. Boy, it sounds like metal, doesn't it? Again, very stiff stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll put this aside. And when we put these on, guess what? It's going to require a longer screw. Fortunately, we get a bag of them when you buy these. So it all works out. Let's go ahead and grab that. A couple of these longer screws here. And what we'll do is I'll just put the plate back there so I can get the holes lined up, so I can see they're lined up. Drop one through, and of course that'll be the top one because that's how I'm going back. And take my 4mm again and just line it up with that block back there. Simple enough. Nothing too difficult about this. And we'll run it back in. I'll just get it a little bit snug because I want it to still be loose for this next screw, so I can wiggle things around a little bit while I get it started with my fingers. And that feels good. Don't want to strip any threads. And now I'll tighten it up. And again, it doesn't take much to tighten these up. Just snug them up with some hand pressure. It doesn't take much at all. And there we have it. Nice faceplate. Or pedal pad, whatever you want to call it. And not only that, but it kind of matches cool with the rest of the pedal. Now it's all black. But the reason I wanted to use this face is because of the curve on it. And when we press the throttle back, that curve's going to help your foot slide around a little bit easier, or slide down it. So it's a little bit easier to modulate than a flat plate. Even though a flat plate is fine, you don't need a curved one, or a one that's got that curve in it to be good with it. Right, so easy enough on that. And this other adjustments here, first this is the rod end up here. And we use these holes in the side like you saw before in the overview. If I raise this up into the next hole, it's going to make it harder for me to push that throttle down, which right now I don't have a problem with. It's just right for me. The preload feels good, and that's another adjustment we can make with a 10mm. This is the preload nut, and I can actually screw that in some more to tighten that preload up a bit. But right now it feels pretty good to me. But what doesn't feel good is this angle, because the way I sit in my rig, I want to bring the whole lever back, and this is where you got to pay attention because you have to be careful. Everything else is going to have to be adjusted because I'm going to adjust this pedal face back to about that angle. And as you can see in the back here, drop my screws everywhere. In the back here, if I want it that angle, you can see how much is kicking out of the back. So I'm going to have to tighten this up. But before I do anything and change the angle, I have to be very mindful of the angle on this pot arm. This little arm here that's on the resistor pot. So what I'm going to do is pull this arm off. The connector rod, if you will. I'm just going to pull it off to get it out of the way. I don't have to worry about it. And then when I get the adjustment I want, then I can look at where I'm at and where I'm going to have to be when I readjust this. Turn it this way. I'm going to have to change this hole here based on keeping this geometry pretty much where it is. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but pretty much where it is now, because I can calibrate in the software to make up for any imperfections of my little angle there. But I want to get it close, just so I can keep things the same. So, in the name of doing things quickly, first thing I'm going to do is take that loose. Now, this has a little nut on it, and on the other side we have a little screw or bolt, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to use a 3/32 Allen wrench, which comes in the kit of tools, by the way, but I have one out of my kit. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch wrench for the actual nut that's on there. Easy enough. I'll just put the box end on it and turn it like this. Now, also, if you're fortunate enough, like me, and you have one of these, makes it even easier. That's a driver. Also, a 3/32. So you see that there? So it makes it even easier to use it like a screwdriver. I highly recommend a set of these if you don't have one. Now, I'd get it loose. I don't want to take the nut all the way off yet because I want to be able to catch the little washers. And there is a washer on the other side here, and I'll show you that as I pull it off. So I'll just unscrew it easily now. And as I pull it out, you can see the rod drop down. And here you go. You can see the screw has got the little washer on it. And our little nylon safety nut that keeps it all in there. Right. So what I usually do to keep things from running away from me, I just put the nut back on, throw it in the dish. All right, so I got one loose. Now, I could take the other side off just to get completely out of my way because I have to use a wrench in here. So that's what I'm going to do. It really doesn't take that much more time when you got the right tools. So I'm just going to go ahead and unscrew that one real quick. As you can see, it comes off pretty quick. And I'll go into the front, from the front rather, to grab that nut because it's a little easier. And as I pull it out, I want to make sure I keep pressure on that rod because it will drop down into the depths of the blackness of where I got to go find it again. So I don't have to worry about it now. Put that over there. All right, now, what I need to do is take a small, short 10 millimeter so I can continuously turn this. First, I'm going to get that resistor arm out of the way. And with everything out of the way, well, actually, if I turn it this way, I can actually keep turning this. And the reason I'm turning it like this is because I'm going to have to run the nut on the back here up. So I need space on the front here to be able to do that. So this is a little meticulous. But if you have a wrench and you set it up right, just like I did, and I knew I was going to do this, that's why I took the rod off, it just makes things tons easier than it would be otherwise. And I'm just going to run this up probably 2 inches because that's where I figure the angle's going to be. And it's just a starting point for the angle. Bear with me while I do this. I know this burns up a lot of video and you guys might get bored watching me turning a wrench. But you can see how it does go quickly if you set it up right when you get ready to do it. I'm going to leave it right about there. All right, I think that's good enough. Now, the cool thing about this is now is I'm going to run this nut up. And as I run it up, you're going to see this pedal come back because there's nothing stopping me now, right? Except the thread that's in here. And when I bring this back, and you'll see what happens when I do this, then it'll stop exactly where I want it and give me the angle I want. And if not, I can adjust it. So to help me out with this little chore, instead of turning a wrench, now I do have those, these are really cool too, the ratcheting wrenches, but they're too slow too. So what I do is get myself a little nut driver with a deep socket 10 mil on it, and we are off to the races. And you can watch that pedal come back when I do this. Too cool, huh? So I'm going to watch it, and as soon as I get to the tip where it's at, so that space that I just took off the rod, you can see now it's all taken up. I've got a bunch of rods sticking out the back now. And now, I'll put this aside. You can see where the angle is. So I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, that's probably going to be a good angle for me. All right? So I'm actually going to adjust the rest of the pedals the same angle, but I'm not going to do it in their adjustment phase when I show you how to adjust things, because we've just seen how to do that. And you can see, if you get the right tools, it doesn't take but a minute. I call it cheating. So, also, now that I've got this down, you can see my throw is a little bit shorter than it was. So what I'm going to do is the stopper down here, I'm going to loosen that up and adjust it. And that's a 10 mil, and I'll take my little 10 mil wrench, again one of the ratcheted ones, although I really don't need it right now for this, and just get it in there and loosen that locking nut. And once that locking nut is loose, a little bit looser, try it on this side, there we go. So now it's loose, and I can spin the locking nut up on the shaft. And I can start screwing this down. I use 2 fingers to do this because it's easier to keep it going. Go ahead and put my potentiometer out of the way. So I use 2 fingers, and I can just keep going till when I think I want to stop. How much throttle throw do I want? And that's about right. It feels right to my hand anyway. So I'm thinking that's going to be good enough to give me good modulation. All right. So once that's done, I can actually tighten it up a little bit, and it actually helps tighten that nut up down there. Finally, you have to take your tin though and stick it on there and tighten it up. Just snug it up. Doesn't take much to hold it. Don't need to strip anything out. So now I'm thinking, yeah, that feels about right. The distance I like. So now we've got to put this rod back in that we took out. I'll give you a closer look at that. I don't think you saw it yet. And it's just got these little, you see how that moves around in there? Little ball joint. Pretty cool. Again, this kind of stuff I used to run on my RC helicopters. And we got the threaded rod in the middle. So what we'll do is we'll put the end back on here, and it was on the top hole when I took it out of this arm. So I'm going to put exactly where it was before on that end and see where I am as far as my angle on the arm. So we'll just go ahead and lay this up here. Stick the screw through first, let it rest on the top there. And screw this back on. Get my little driver out and my wrench. And I can go ahead and snug this up because I know I won't be changing that. It's in the right hole. There's no adjustment needed there. But you will see very quickly that to get the right angle I had before, I need to go up, and you can see, if I can get the light on it, how far that little bar is up there. So even if I put it in the last hole, I'm looking at it now, it still doesn't have the angle I need. Right, so what am I going to have to do? Even the last hole, I don't have as much angle as I want on it. Well, this is where the good part comes in for these kind of connectors. All you have to do is pull it up and get to where you can get your hand on it and start screwing it. See what I'm doing? I'm screwing that end down onto the rod, essentially making it shorter. So I'll keep doing that a little bit as it goes down, and I'm going to get square again. I'll just do a quick check. Now I can see that my hole lines up, and I've got some angle on it that I like. In fact, that's pretty good right there. I'm just going to give it a few more twists, and I think that'll be it. All the way at the end hole. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's got a pretty good angle on it. So we'll go with that. Let it rest again up there so it doesn't fall back. And simple enough. Get it lined up, put your screw through it. Get our little nut started over here. If I can get it situated right. And then we're done, except for tightening up. Alright, so we now got the angle I want on the pedal. And I've tightened down the end rod, and you can see it's still able to move around in there pretty freely. But now I have the angle on the potentiometer arm that I want. And now everything looks good. Alright, well that wasn't too bad. And if it wasn't enough resistance for me on the throttle, which it is right now, I'm pretty sure it is, I can always move this up another hole. There's one hole left. Or if it was too much resistance, of course, I could just take this out and move it down. But I'm going to leave it where it is. So, that's about it. I don't know what else to show you on it. It's pretty simple as far as the adjustments. Again, the main thing here, it's not like it's difficult. The main thing is to make sure you take care of the rod and the other parts on here, because you have to adjust all this stuff together. Everything has to stay together, and that way you don't hurt anything and you still got good movement in your pedal. A little finicky, but hey, for what these things cost, I am willing to put in the effort. Now, next will be the brake pedal, and we'll mount that up when we come back and take a look at that one. Alright, the brake pedal is probably the easiest one of all of them to adjust. All we're going to do is put bumpers in it, and all we have to do here is adjust this rod either higher for more resistance, or make it a harder pedal to push, or lower for less. And I'm actually going to adjust that because I want it to be as hard as I can. And first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and change out. I'm not going to show you guys the angle adjustment because you already saw that in the throttle, so there's no sense in showing you all over again the same thing. But I am going to adjust this, which I haven't done yet. And if you'll notice something else when you see here on the brake pedals, these two screws here, I was going to show you how to adjust that, but it's just two screws on each side, or bolts, and you loosen them up, and of course it just goes up or down. It's, it's pretty simple stuff. It's covered again on the ProtoSimTech site very well by Chris himself. And what I'm going to do here is just loosen this a little bit before I get started. Just to show you, you can see the tension on it now, or rather the free play there is on it now, which actually I kind of like, but it's easy enough to change that just by moving this nut up. It takes the load off that spring, and you'll see here in a second that you can see now there's a lot more. Again, that will adjust two things right here. The angle of the pedal, because you're going to have to move it up like we saw on the throttle, and you can also adjust how much free float, if you will, on the brake pedal you have before it tightens up. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this on the top. Now remember, because I want the most resistance I can get. Now if remember, this is where it becomes not metric anymore, and we're on standard, as we call it in the States, standard. And all I'm going to do is loosen this up, and it's a little bit more involved to get this off, because remember, we got these spacers in here. Oh, it's watching my box here. Again, these guys are all connected. It's like the Siamese twins. Every time you move something, it wants to move too. Alright, so we can see here we've got our spacers, and those are going to come out, or they have to come out to adjust. Now what my idea here is to try to move the spacers and the rod together up to the next hole without pulling everything out. So I don't know how well that's going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. So when I take this off, there's a nylon safety nut, and of course we have the actual, well, like I said, I was hoping for too much there for that to happen. So we have the bolt here, and of course the spacers are coming off. No biggie, we'll get it fixed. Just let that lever fall forward, and there's your bolt. We'll put that in the tray, and the spacers, we'll keep those right here. So the idea is to now get into the very highest hole up here. So let's do that. First thing I want to do is put one of these spacers down. I'll have just one in my hand, and stick the bolt in a little ways, just so it'll hold that spacer for me. Alright, so it's holding the spacer. I'm going to bring the rod up now, and then push the bolt in a little further so I can get into the rod, just to where it's flush with the other side of the rod back there. Because I still got to get this other spacer in here, and I don't know how hard or easy it's going to be. So we'll just kind of slide it in there at first, and kind of wiggle things a little. And it looks like it's going in there pretty good. This might end well. Alright, so there. See, it just went right through. Now I'm at the highest hole, which is going to give me the most resistance as far as pushing the pedal lever. And now I've got to put my safety nut and my washer back on. Again, no biggie. Very easy to do. And we'll use our 3/16. I'll show you that. 3/16 driver and our 7/16 wrench. See if we're going the right way this time. Yes, we are. And again, just snug it up. No need to make it real tight. See how it's floating around in there? That rod end? That's nice. I like that. Now I could keep tightening down on this and make it hardly ever, so it's really harder for it to move, but I don't want that. I don't want it binding up. As long as I don't have any play this way, or a lot of play this way. The whole idea is here just to not let this bind up on you when you're actually using your brake pedal. Alright, so that was simple enough. Let's get back to the bumpers, or the urethane bumpers, and we're going to change those out. And it's very simple. Again, the brake is the easiest one of them all. And all you have to do is take off this little nut back here. And it's almost ready to come off anyway. I'll push it through a little bit. And as it comes off, again, all of these are these nylon type of safety nuts that you see on a lot of things. Put that in the little bowl over there, and we'll pull the washer off with the little rubber stopper. Or not rubber stopper, but rubber bumper. Try to keep in the pedal quiet as it returns. Put that aside. Now, all we got to do is, now that this rod's connected, it'll just pull the whole assembly out. But you want to kind of put your finger on it to keep it from flying everywhere as it falls out. And there you have it. Couldn't be easier. Now I'm just going to pull the black one off. And because I want to go as stiff as I can, I'm going to get rid of the red one and put another black one on. Now, you want to make sure, I've already done it once, so I'm not going to do it again, to lube the inside of this urethane bumper before you put it in. Lithium grease, 100% silicone grease is what I like to use, and you'll be good to go. But I've already done that, so I'm not really have to concern myself with it right now. And also, while we're here, I might as well show you this. All this will come off, of course. We have another piece of PVC plastic. There's a little spacer in there that fits in there. And you can see all this stuff is machined out so that these things will fit in there, and the spring will fit right in there. Very nice. And of course the other spacer over here is machined out too to accept the other end of that spring. And we don't need it to be cut out for our bumpers. So we got one black one, and remember, spacer goes in between them, don't forget that. And then the other black one. And then we're ready to go. Like I said, this is the easiest thing to adjust there is. And now, gonna play with this a little bit to get it to come down. So now I'm just going to stick it through there, and you see the actual the rod itself is coming through because I don't have these on here yet. But once I get them on there and tighten the nut up, that'll kind of cure itself. No worries. So I'll tighten that up. And now the rod sleeve that you saw before is now bumping up against this washer. So now it'll just push the brake. And again, if I like that much play in it, that's fine before I actually get a firm brake pedal. But I really don't, so what I'm going to do is, and you can see why it's doing that now. If I look over here and show you, there's a space in here between this piece of plastic and the actual washer back here where the spring is sitting. And if I tighten this nut, that's just going to compress it on top of it, so that space goes away. And as that space goes away, the little pre gets a little less. And actually that feels pretty good. I'm going to leave it there for now. So you can adjust this load cell. There is an adjustability made into it. But I really don't see any reason for you ever to have to do that unless you were changing one out and needed to adjust it for whatever reasons. But there's really no reason to adjust it. Once it's set by Chris, when he assembles these units, I don't really see any purpose in it, and you could screw things up by adjusting it. Just go to his site and look at the videos. He'll tell you. Alright, so that's it for the brake. Again, very simple. And again, I'm going to run this nut all the way up here so I can bring the angle of my brake pedal back. But there's no sense for you guys to see that. You've already seen whatever adjustments I can do to this pedal. And the next we'll move over to the clutch pedal, which we do have a few adjustments we can do on it. So we're going to adjust the clutch now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the angle on it. Because really, I can adjust other things to change the feel of this a little bit, but it pretty much is going to feel the way it feels based on the travel of this pedal. And I can adjust the travel so it actually pushes longer down these rails here, but once I get through that initial hump, that's really all I want to feel, and it goes far enough back already. Alright, so I'm going to bring this pedal face back like we saw on the throttle. But of course it's more complicated here because we have a lot more going on. First thing I want to do again is take that rod off, because as I said before, that is a very fragile little rod, and if you don't take it off and get it clear while you're doing all these adjustments, it's very easy to bend it and get it in a bad position. So we'll go ahead and do just like we did before, and you saw this on the throttle already, so I'll go ahead and just motor through it so you guys don't have to sit here too long while I'm doing this. Bear with while I do it. Again, don't want to drop that thing, and we got her out. So we'll go ahead and put all that away for now. Now, the actual clutch mechanism here with these seal bearings, and it's got a stainless steel rod that goes through there, goes through this main block. What we want to do is detension this, and the only way to do that, of course, is to pull the springs off. And again, you may have seen this already on his site, but I'm going to go ahead and do it so I can show you what how you have to regulate how you're doing the adjustment here on these plates. And if you have this tensioned up when you're trying to do it, it's almost impossible. It can be very difficult and even a little bit tricky to where it might be dangerous. Oh, that doesn't, just use this one. One more. There we go. Alright, so we got both nuts off. Now we'll detension the springs one at a time. And this again is a little bit tricky, not that bad. I'm going to hold this side while I take the spring off of this side. Or I could hold this side while I'm taking the spring off. Either way you do it. You just don't want it flipping over and smacking your hand or something like that, which it can do because these springs have some pretty decent tension on them. So I detension that one. I'm holding this side down. I'm still holding it down until I can get this one off. And as it slides off, I relieve the pressure on that side so it doesn't flip the other way. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. Now we got this loose. We've got our potentiometer loose. Our arm is loose now, so it's out of the way. And what I'm going to do is, just like I did before, I'm going to take this. Well, see, here's a little different now. Now we got this in our way. So it's not as easy as it was before, and it takes a little time. So what I'm going to do, if you guys will bear with me here while I do this, it should only take a little bit because I only got a couple inches to go. Now you could go ahead and pull this top rod out of here if you wanted to, and you wouldn't have to keep doing this. But then I've got to start messing around with the top rod again and the spacers and get those back in. And I know the spacers, if you saw the brake video, or the brake parts when we were adjusting that, you could see how it didn't seem like to be that big of a deal to adjust the rod. Or not adjust the rod, but actually put the spacers back in. But some of the spacers are tighter than others, and that's just something you have to keep in mind. And that's about it anyway. I think I'm going to give it one more turn here, and I'll be done. So what's going to happen here, of course, get these bearings back where they're supposed to be. They're sitting just like they were. Now I'm going to run this nut up again. Again, I'm going to do that quickly so you guys don't have to wait around and watch it. And I'll just go ahead and pull this back now. Now that everything's attached, I don't have to worry about anything binding up. And you can see this is coming back, and it's going to ride all the way back up the hill there. That simulates that pressure plate spring. So we'll go ahead and just, I'm watching it up there, see when it makes contact with the washer, and that's about it right there. But now you can see I'm way up here, and I'm not going to get that feel anymore as far as the pressing through the pressure plate, because now it's just going to do that. So of course I have to take these plates and put them back. Not that big of a deal, pretty easy. All I have to do is get in here with my 10mm wrench, and over here I'm going to use my 5mm driver on these, and there's 4 of them. There's 2 on each side, and while I hold it, I'm going to try to just loosen it a little bit. I'm not going to loosen it too much, just so it won't bind up when I'm moving these tracks back. Just a couple turns. Do the same over here. And this is all pretty easy stuff, but you do have to pay attention and just make sure you don't leave anything in the way. It's going to hurt something when you put it back together. Alright, so we've got it loose, and remember this bolt through here on the back, you can see that, actually holds these 2 plates together, so they kind of move together anyway. There is a little bit of wobble in there, but for the most part they're just going to move together. So what I'm going to do is just keep moving this plate back as a unit until my bearings drop down to where I want them to be, which is right on the edge down here, right on the edge of the plate. That's where they were before. Now I can go in and start tightening up my bolts, because now I'm sitting exactly where I want to sit. So let me go ahead and get in here, snug them up. And again, you don't have to tighten up too much because they do have some lock washers on them. Just snug them up. All this stuff, you really don't have to tighten any of it really hard. And 2 more, and we are done. Except, of course, we have to reinstall. Well, there's a couple things actually left. First, we're going to have to get our springs back on, so I'm going to go ahead and do that again, holding one side, because we know it's going to pull down when I put this spring on this side. So I'm just going to kind of hold it there, bring my spring up, and slip it on. So now it's trying to flip over on me. So just not that big of a deal. You just got to take your time, be careful, and make sure the spring is engaged like they should. So now they're on there, and everything looks good. Chances are they probably won't pop off. But again, he puts these nylon safety nuts on each end just in case to keep them from sliding off. So again, you don't have to tighten these at all. You don't want to run them up on top of the springs. You just want to snug them up a little bit. So that's what I'll do with my wrench now. Snug it up. Alright, so now we're looking good. So now I should have some throw. But if you notice, it's not going too far because I still have to adjust the stop down here. Simply loosen that tin nut that's sitting on top of there. And that's what I did. And I'm just going to spin it up on the threaded rod. And again, I like to get the 2 fingers in here to do this, even though it kind of blocks you guys from what I'm doing. If I do it this way, you can see it. I'm just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm kind of picking up on the rod at the same time I'm turning it, taking pressure off it. It makes it screw in a lot easier. And we'll just screw it down a little, about a 1/2 inch here. I think that might do it. But once we get down here, then I can trust the pedal again and make sure that it's going over the hump and giving me that nice spring feeling. So let's try it now. And now you can see the stop is stopping it right at the top. And that's, I might go just a little bit more on that. So let me do that. Spin it up just a little bit further, because I wanted to go a little bit further over the hump than that. So see how that does. Yeah, that feels better. That's got it. Right, so now I have my angle where I want it pretty much. And everything is back on except for one last thing. That's always the last thing that goes on, and that's our potentiometer. And if you remember, we had a bit of an issue. Well, not that big of an issue, but we did have to change and screw down this rod end because it was too long even for the furthest away hole. So I'm assuming that's going to be the case here to give me the right angle I want. And it is. So before I even put it on, I'm just going to take it and screw the ends together. And really, if you want to do this easier, you find yourself a little wrench like this, and you can actually kind of just spin it while you hold one end. That makes it easier on your fingers. That's an old RC trick that I used to do, because we did a lot of adjustment on these things when you're adjusting a helicopter's rotors and things like that and trying to get them to sync up with the servos. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, so my angle is there. You know, that's darn close. Talking about getting lucky. Yeah, I think that'll actually, I'm pretty sure that's going to do it. Let me just do it a couple more turns. Just because I got it out, I don't want to have to do it again if I don't have to. Alright, that should do it. And again, I'm making sure they're straight. They're not at angles to each other, so that they'll go on nice and straight without any issues. So we got it on there. Let's put our nut back on. Quarter-inch wrench, and again the 3/32 driver. And again, just snug it up a little bit. Now we'll put it up front. Take our screw for the front one, put it through it, and we should have a pretty good angle here. Let's see. Yep, not bad. So now we'll go ahead and put the nut back on. We got a good angle. Everything is looking good. Again, a little bit fiddly to get all these adjustments made. But I am not complaining. I guess I could complain. I could call it a con in my final thoughts, and I might even, because there's not going to be too many cons on this set as far as I can see so far. So anyway, now we'll see what we got. Make sure everything is free. There's no binding anywhere. And that's feeling pretty good. Very good. All right, cool. So there it is. The clutch has been adjusted. We're ready to go with the clutch now. All 3 pedals are ready to go. So when we come back, we're going to see the pedals mounted to the 80/20 frame that I used to run on my stage 4 over there. And I'm actually going to take this plate off, the face plate off, and run one of those black plates on it, because I've done that to the brake also. See? And I think I remember that I was going to measure this for you guys so you can just see how big this thing is. So let's take out the little measurer here. It's my little machinist ruler. And you can see right there that we're almost, if you look at the ones that aren't upside down, it's about 3 3/4 of an inch, it looks like to me. Right on it. 3 3/4 of an inch that way. And this way, looks like it's 4 3/4 inch. Let's use it this way. It'll be easier to see the quarter. Yep, right on it. 4 3/4. And I was looking at these here, and I believe they're about the same. Yeah, 4 3/4. But this way, of course, they're looks like 2 3/4. Nowhere near as big as that. So again, give you a reference of how big this fat one is. It's huge. But I'm going to run the small one, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one on here. And when you see it mounted, they'll all have black faces on them. And we're going to run it that way. So when we come back, it'll all be mounted, and then we'll throw it on the stage 4 and give them a run. We have the durometers off the brake pedal, and we're just going to do a quick test using our tire hardness durometer meter, which we always do with any brake pedal that has durometers that shape its feel and its travel. First, we'll do the red ones, which are the softest ones. According to Chris over at ProtoSimTech, that's supposed to be 60. And I'm getting 65. Let's see if I'm getting that also on this one. Yeah, so they're about 65. So about 5 over what the manufacturer must have been telling Chris what these are, which is not uncommon really, and that's why it's great to have one of these, so you know what it really is. And the black one's supposed to be 70. So I can get it there so you can see it. And that's a little over 70. So not quite 75, so it's just a little bit over 70. And this one, well, that's not right. 80? Wow, let's try the other side here. Sometimes different sides give you different readings. Yeah, that's more like the other one. So they're pretty consistent, but just like 5 over or 3 over what the manufacturer was telling me. Now, I've ran all these bumpers, and I've wrote them in the 2 red one configuration, and I ran them in the 2 black configuration, and I ran them in the black-red configuration, which I like the best as far as feel, because it gave me more of a progressive feel of, in other words, the softer one compresses first, and then the black one will compress, giving me that progressive feel. At first it's easy, then it starts tightening up. It just gives me a little bit more feel for the modulation of the brake pedal. But even with the brake pedal lever rod end all the way at the top setting to make it as hard as possible to press it, this was still just a little bit too light for me. And when I ran 2 of these, it was strong enough, but I lost the progressive feel. It was like instant on hardness, and that was it. And I really prefer the progressive feel. And I talked to Chris over at ProtoSimTech about it, and he is going to be adding to the kits and sending me, hopefully, a harder durometer, an 80. And just to test that and this is what's great about having extra durometers laying around, and one of these, so you know what they are. I got these Fibrexes left over from my HEs, and I got a soft white one that I didn't even use because I know it was going to be too soft. But the green ones, let's see what they are. They're going to come out to 85. I think this one's going to be 85 too. These are pretty consistent, yeah. So 85s. Now, of course, we know these are like more like 75s or 73s, and these were dead on 75. So what I did was, and because I got fortunate here, you can see that this green stacked together is about the same height as one of the black ones, and also one of the red ones. So it kind of fit in there, except for it was a little bigger in the tube there, and of course they're bigger around, but that didn't matter the way I stacked them in. And I actually liked the greens on the reds. It gave me a good progressive feel. The red collapsed first, of course, just like I said before, and these guys picked it up. So yeah, I really like this. And this wasn't bad, but still a little bit too on this. Right away it was stiff. It just didn't have enough give on this one here, the black one. And of course there's not much give at all on the green one. So yeah, the green and the red turned out to be what I like the best. And again, that's what's so great about bumper-based brake pedals. When you have these in here, you can change them around and really custom tune, and even buy separate ones if you want to, and change them around. As long as you have a little meter like this, you'll know exactly which direction to go. And of course, not to mention, as these bumpers start to age, we can see that happening on our durometers, and we know when it's time to replace them. Right, so again, we always do a durometer test, and that was the durometer test. Hope you enjoyed it. It's something like that's important to me on the information when I'm tuning my brake pedals, and this is not an expensive thing to get, really, 30 bucks or so, to be able to know exactly what your durometers are doing. All right, so we'll get on to the next segment. So the pedals are all mounted now, and you can see I have them in a heel and toe configuration, so I can get my foot over there and slap the throttle when I need to. And you can also see that all the pedals faces are replaced with these curved black pads, which looks pretty cool, actually, I think. Let you guys see the rest of it. Kind of a unique look, and I like it. So yeah, these special edition pedals with all black like that look pretty cool. Alright, so now we'll just go ahead and get them mounted to the Stage 4 rig and start driving it. Of course, you'll see a video of me driving the pedals, different angles, and I'll be overdubbing and talking a little bit about each pedal that I'm using here and what it feels like and what I think about it. So let's go ahead and get to that part. Alright, so here we are testing out the pedals before we take a little drive, and just making sure the throttle's working and feeling like it should for me. And we're going to look over here and test the clutch. You can see the clutch mechanism working there when we use that. Do a little heel and toe here, a little practice. Been a while, so I might miss a shift, I don't know. So we'll go ahead and get into the car. And we are running the Skip Barber car at Lime Rock, one of my favorite tracks, and one of my favorite cars for doing heel and toe in. Just a great car to drive overall. It's just a lot of fun, and I'm sure a lot of you guys already know that. So we'll just go ahead and head out on the track here. First off, the pedals as a unit seem to work very well together, and with these black pads on them, it really facilitates a heel and toe kind of action on the pedals. Again, just showing the versatility of these pedals. They're just capable of doing so many things. So let's concentrate on the throttle first when we talk about that as we go around the track here. It's a very smooth and consistent throttle feel. I'm really able to regulate the throttle really well in the corners and coming out of the corners and applying the power, or coming over this notorious hill up here where you lose grip as the car crests that hill, and it's easy to regulate the power in between there and put it back on. The throttle is a joy to use. I always know what position my foot is in when I'm using this throttle. Of course, I'm using racing shoes, so they have very thin soles, so it gives you a little more sensitivity also. A little less than driving with socks, but when you're driving like this, I wouldn't recommend doing it with socks. Probably tear your socks up, maybe your feet too. Again, the throttle's easy to reach over and catch with your heel. Just a lot of fun to use. Very consistent. I never had any problems with it. It just builds confidence when you drive the car using a throttle this smooth and precise. Next, we'll get over to the brake pedal. And you can see here where I'm using the brake pedal, I'm actually have a double black stack on the bumpers, which is as stiff as I could get the bumper combination, and the connector rod end that fits into the lever of the brake pedal is already all the way up to the top hole to give me as much resistance as possible when I push on it. And it still gave me the resistance that I liked a lot better than having the red and the black in there, but then when you do that, you kind of lose the progressive feel that you get when you have a harder bumper stacked against a softer bumper. So that when you first push the pedal, it's kind of soft, but then it firms up as you go down. When you have the two hard bumpers on, it's just, well, hard all the time. You really don't get that sensation, which I really like. The good news is this is a 60 and an 80, rather a 60 and a 70 rated durometer that Chris is shipping with the PT-1s. But he is getting or sourcing an 80 rating for a durometer of 80 on the bumper, and he's going to be sending those out too. So I'm thinking with that, with the red one, will probably give me what I'm looking for, and maybe even that with the black one might give it to me. But I'm thinking the red's probably going to be where it's at. The brake is very nice. It's easy to trail brake. It's easy to get your brake threshold without guessing where it's going to be braking on you. And the potentiometer on the control box where you adjust the sensitivity of the load cell is also very nice to dial in a feel that you like, or where you want your sensitivity thresholds to be. So that was an added plus having that. And the brake pedal also, it's just easy to reach over to and get your foot on when you're doing the heel and toe and tapping the throttle. You can see right there. Changing 3 gears as I'm coming into the first turn. Again, these things are just a blast to use. I've been pounding on these pedals for a few weeks now, and so has other people that have come over have used them, really like them. And also, if you watched my direct drive comparison video, you would have seen the last guy testing, Nathan, was actually using him while he was testing the different direct drive force feedback wheels. So we had them even then to integrate to see how other guys liked how they felt, not just me. And everybody loved them. They're just tough. You can pound on them all day. Like you see here, I've been doing it for a few weeks now, and it just keeps working. I don't see anything coming loose. It's just a great, solid design overall. Just well executed. And I really appreciate that kind of stuff. Chris worked a long and hard time on getting these things right. And from what I can see so far that I'm using them, they are right. Let's talk about the clutch pedal. It's a very cool clutch pedal. You can see right there when I was shifting, downshifting 3 more gears on that first turn. Very cool feel, because you do get that pressure plate spring feel to it when you push through it. And of course it pushes back to you, or pushes your foot back to you, to give you that feel that the pressure plate is pushing back against you. Like if you have a standard shift car, you guys know what I'm talking about. Of course, some cars are different than others as far as how a clutch feels, but that's the way I like it to feel, and I've always thought it should feel, and it just does a great job of replicating that. And again, I've been pounding on it for a long time, right along with the rest of the pedals, and all I see is a little wear on the little ramps that those sealed bearings travel on. I can see some shiny spots where that's been wearing, but that's not to be unexpected, because I think everything that you're going to be using like this, and you got those two surfaces creating friction all the time, you're going to see some of that. But I don't see any kind of wear on the bearing themselves, or the bearing surfaces themselves. They're still nice and shiny and smooth, and no gouging or anything like that. Overall, I'm just really happy with these pedals. And again, at the price that these things are coming in, an introductory price, it feels like you're stealing them. They're that cheap. It's, as far as what you get, it's just amazing. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to the final thoughts. You see me driving enough here. We'll just go ahead and shut it down and go on over to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the PT-1 sim pedals from ProtoSimTech. First off, I'd like to congratulate Chris Smith on finally bringing these pedals to market. I know it's been a very long journey for him, as I was watching the videos he put out documenting this great effort. And in the end, what a great result. First, let's talk about the cons. Really, when you look at this pedal sets, when you consider the price of them, they're really hard to find. Yes, the adjustments on these pedals can take a bit longer than some others out there because you have to pay attention to what effect the adjustment you are making is having on other parts of the pedal, as we saw. So, in a nutshell, these adjustments can be finicky, and you have to take your time and not rush it. And I personally don't have a problem with putting in the extra effort myself. Next con would be, for me anyway, is I couldn't get the brake pedal dialed into a resistance level that I would have liked. Even when using both the harder black bumpers and the brake pedal's lever bumper rod at the uppermost limits of the adjustment. But then again, it isn't something that I couldn't live with. And now that I've listed that as a con, I'm happy to report that Chris will be offering an additional bumper with a durometer rating of 80, which, from my past experience of using a bumper with similar ratings, that should do the trick for me. Last con is there is a few rough places on some of the metal pieces that show through the powder coat. But, as I've said before, at this price point, I'm really not concerned, as the overall build quality and parts used more than make up for it. Now let's get to the pros, which there are a lot with this pedal set, as you might imagine. Firstly, the quality of components used and the overall build quality of these pedals just belie the price of these pedals. Just nicely designed and executed. The clutch pedal has a great feel to it. It feels like pushing through a real clutch's pressure plate spring, and it gives a satisfying push back up against your foot when you release it. The brake pedal provides good feedback to your foot, and the load cell gives you a consistent braking feel during threshold and trail braking. Other than not giving me quite enough resistance, which again is just a personal preference kind of thing, the brake pedal worked flawlessly. Which brings us to the throttle pedal. Here again, I have no complaints. The pedal feel is smooth, with a good tactile feedback to your foot when you're using it. It gives you a very easy to regulate throttle motion. I was able to consistently and evenly regulate even the trickiest of throttles on cars with a lot of rear end torque. Another pro is that these pedals can be mounted in either an F1 configuration like you see here, or even in a GT configuration. Hanging, but you have to make your own bracket, fabricate something out so that you can set them up so it will hang there. Very versatile set indeed. At the end of the day, I really couldn't come up with much to gripe about when it came to the PT-1s. I feel like I should send Chris another $100, because at this introductory price, it literally feels like I stole them. They're just that good of a value. Even at a bit higher price, you're getting a hell of a sim racing pedal set for your money here. Well, I guess that's about it. I'm Barry Rowland, and thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel.